Another film review with Andrew Krammer and another JJ McCarthy injury to talk about. It feels like that's kind of status quo this year, Andrew. What do you what do we think? What do we think overall about what we saw Sunday, and what do we make of this latest twist in JJ McCarthy's season before we get into the particulars of the film from the Giants game?
Yeah, boy, just the fourth different injury that has cost him time in his young career. I think it's now 24 of his 32 games have been affected by injuries, 75% of them. Obviously, that includes the entire first year, but it's another injury, too, that the team can't immediately pinpoint when it happened, which I don't know if that's more concerning or not, because at least with some injuries, you might be able to say, oh, it was a freak, collision or accident, but whether it was the meniscus tear where they weren't sure in the preseason game of when he exactly did it, or this one when Kevin O'Connell immediately, at least after the game, told reporters that he wasn't too sure when that injury happened. It's just, you hate to see it for JJ, but it's also concerning that, Mike, I think you pointed out in our live blog at startribune.com during the game, but his durability or lack thereof is becoming just as concerning as his actual ability out there.
Yeah, and then they didn't know which play the concussion happened on against Green Bay, and that's right. That's something that's kind of diagnosed more after the fact, so maybe it's harder to tell with that since he didn't show symptoms during the game or wasn't reporting symptoms during the game. And I think they had a pretty good idea what play he hurt his ankle against Atlanta. It's just that he kind of played through it, and then you could kind of identify after the fact. It was definitely the play where he got tackled. I think it was third quarter. He got tackled and kind of went down awkwardly, and it just didn't have the same push after that. But it's you're right. It's four different injuries, four different parts of the body, and it really did look like, it's kind of troubling when he's sent back out there and they're saying he can't grip the ball, and so the strip sack that leads to the fumble that leads to the potentially game-turning play. And again, it's a game that doesn't really matter outcome-wise, but if he's being sent back out here, then he can't grip a football, there's a pretty good chance he's going to fumble. And it almost looked in the replay like the ball came out even before he even got hit. So it's just like, what's going on there? And like, is he not telling them? Is he like wanting to keep it a secret because he's so afraid of coming out of a game because he's got this history? I don't know what it is, but he's having such a hard time staying on the field. And as I wrote Monday, it's like at this point in his career, he's not good enough to be this injured. It's not like Byron Buxton with the Twins 10 years ago, where you're like, man, if he can just stay healthy, this guy's an all-star. Like, he's still in the maybe pile right now in terms of how good he can be. And we're losing information, and we're losing, the ability to assess while he's injured too.
Yeah, and I mean, he had a hard time gripping on the football way back in week 2 when he's dropping that pitch on the turnover at the goal line. So I'm not saying that this injury didn't affect him. And you're right. Kevin O'Connell said afterward that he had trouble gripping the ball by that point when he fumbled. But that was absolutely his fault. Like, he needs to hold on to that thing. He needs to get rid of it. I saw a lot of debate online about who was at fault and whether Brian Burns should have been unblocked and all these things. And Brian O'Neill told our Emily Liker after the game that, no, that was blocked exactly how it should have been blocked. And you could see it on the film. Like, when Brian O'Neill is trying to block the closest guys to the football, the guy he's tracking happens to be a guy who just drops into coverage. It's not incumbent on a 315-pound guy to be agile enough to chase Brian Burns. It's incumbent upon the quarterback to recognize pre-snap, we might have this unblocked pressure. And if Abdul Carter jumps in front of the screen like he did, regardless of how my hand feels, I need to get rid of that football. You cannot hold on to that. You certainly can't drop it. And yeah, I think O'Connell also said after the game that McCarthy did not report that injury prior to that moment. So yeah, it's fair to question why he wouldn't have at that point, especially if he was having trouble gripping the football. The play before that was just a handoff, so it's not like he had to test it at that point. And then I think the play or two before that, well, no, it would have been the rushing touchdown that he had. And O'Connell said that the injury happened at some point even before that with the 2-minute warning. So it's just a lot of stuff with McCarthy where you just need to see him on the field. And the fact that all these little things keep getting in the way is just enough to kind of amount to quite the headache for them trying to figure out whether or not this kid can be your long-term solution. And frankly, what they're doing with him, I'm sure we'll get into it here, but what they're doing with him in terms of actually trying to roll it out in terms of the X's and O's, trying to develop him, they've already kind of waved the white flag a little bit on some of those fronts.
Yeah, let's talk about that, because it seemed like he had a little bit better rapport with Justin Jefferson on Sunday. It was some Jefferson catches and runs, things like that, where Jefferson was taking some shorter passes on third down and making some stuff happen. I think he had 4 catches for 57 yards when McCarthy was in the first half. So that was good to see, but none of it seemed overly complicated. A lot of it was pretty short. What did you make of what we saw from him when he was playing for most of that first half?
Yeah, I think you pointed it out. The layups, the easy nature to which they were trying to get Justin Jefferson the ball. They're so used to, and just to stick with the basketball analogy, they're so used to Justin Jefferson being the Steph Curry 3-point shooter, where no matter what you do with him, you're going to be able to get 15, 20, 25-yard chunk plays. And they tried to do that, maybe to a fault, for so long with JJ McCarthy, and he just struggled to be accurate downfield to get him the ball in space, in timing of the play. We saw it. We saw how badly some of those balls were thrown. So now these are drag routes. These are hook routes. These are little 5-yard just curls, just kind of run out there and turn around and we're going to throw it to you. They weren't necessarily trying to do elaborate things with him or really trying to push him downfield. They were just trying to get these layups. And one of the only incompletions, there was 2 incompletions targeted to JJ, or Jefferson, I should say. One of them, Jefferson, we saw dropped it. The other one was another, like they were just spamming these drag routes, these easy drag routes. And the Giants linebacker just obviously jumped it, knew what was coming. So like that's the thing they're trying to do. They're trying to really make it so simple, but the Giants are such an easy defense. They're a spot kind of read defense where they drop to landmarks on the field. They don't necessarily match route patterns. There's going to be a lot of windows for McCarthy to throw into, and he succeeded for the most part. But then there was critical situations where he didn't get the ball out in time. We mentioned the strip sack. There was the 3rd down in the red zone actually on the series before that, or 2 series before that. I think it was before Will Reichard's second field goal where he just missed. He's staring at Jalen Naylor at the pylon open, and he just completely misses it. Like I think he took a sack and they kicked the field goal. Like these are the kind of things where, like, against the Giants defense, you should be making those throws at start number 8 or 9 of your career, whichever we're at.
Well, and that was funny you mentioned that play, because I think the analyst on that play, they rewound it and showed it, and he was like trying to say McCarthy had nowhere to go with the ball, and I'm looking there like Naylor's open over there in the corner. Like that was where he should have gone with the ball. So and we don't expect him to make every single throw, but I didn't feel like this was a continuation of the Dallas game. I know that O'Connell was trying to say this was another kind of step in the right direction for him. I didn't get that sense as much. I mean, obviously the interception that was given to him was Naylor's fault, and his numbers would have looked better if Addison would have pulled in what was a really good throw into the end zone that he just dropped. That was a good read. That was a good throw. That's a play that Addison should make. But he also had a 96-yard pick six wiped off of his books because of an offsides call. And that was not a good throw. That was high. I know that it hit Naylor's hand, but that's the kind of play where it's like Naylor's stretched as far as he can just to get fingertips on the ball. That's not one where I say, if you get your hands on it, you got to catch it. Not everything falls into that category. That was 75% on McCarthy, and you can't have those kinds of misses down by the goal line. So I didn't think it was I thought it was an okay game for him before the injury, but then obviously the way the thing took a turn, it got very negative.
Yeah, and I actually thought some of his best throws were the seldom times they put him into the crux of the offense, which I keep talking about, which is when they throw him under center and have him do the play action drops. There's only 2 of them in the first half before he got hurt. And one of them was a 16-yarder to Jefferson. The other one was the 20-yarder to Addison. And so those are 2 of his best throws, the farthest downfield. They just didn't try that stuff with him a lot because, frankly, the sample size you've had with him shows he's not very good at it. So I do wonder how much of this is like not being a self-defeating prophecy, but like when you're not trying to push that development or that those things he's not good at because you're trying to win football games like the Minnesota Vikings are, you're going to be limited in what you can see out of McCarthy. And I felt like the fans, the Vikings, were very limited in what he could do and what they could see because it was a ton of screens. It was all the easy short stuff to Jefferson we were talking about. And again, rightfully so. This kid has played so poorly this season that I understand this is why they're at where they're at, but it's also why I say they've kind of already waved the flag on just what they're going to be asking him to do. I thought coming off the 2 games against Washington and Dallas that perhaps they might take another step forward and might put him under center more and might try to mix it up. But it was about a quarter and a half of just shotgun throws, under center runs, and the Giants just being able to kind of tell whatever was coming. And it was a credit to their playmakers and a credit to how bad, a discredit to how bad the Giants defense is, that the Vikings could still move the ball regardless.
Yeah, and they, Max Brosmer comes in, plays the second half. They only score 3 points, but he's kind of put into game manager mode. And I thought he obviously played much better than he did in the Seattle game. And we're probably going to get I don't know exactly, but we're figuring we might get another longer look at him depending on what the McCarthy injury is. And maybe that gives them information for backup, whatever they want to think about for next season. But what did you think of Brosmer and what they were asking him to do in the second half?
Yeah, it was a bunch of the similar things. Brosmer had a couple of those quick connections with Justin Jefferson, those catch and run opportunities. So they stuck to the game plan with Max. It was much different from the Seattle game. I think that was still when Kevin O'Connell was admitting after that loss of we asked Max to run our standard offense because we thought he could do it. And a month later, they're not even asking McCarthy to do that at this point. So Max stepped into a shotgun heavy, kind of ball out quick kind of offense. And I thought he played well. And frankly, the hero of the offense and that game was Aaron Jones.
Yeah.
For him to play through the injuries he's playing through, for Jordan Mason to get hurt 4 plays into the game for him, and Aaron to come back. It's the shoulder injury he's been playing through on top of the ankle injury that he picked up. He ran hard. He obviously ran for the game clinching first down, had 20 plus carries in this game just out of necessity because Max Brosmer's not somebody they wanted to ask to throw a bunch. So, but you still looked at the numbers for Max and McCarthy and you in the film, and they were efficient enough within the game plan of what they were asked to do, because facing this Giants team, the Giants don't force you to push the ball downfield to try a whole lot of things.
Yeah, and I thought it was actually one of Jefferson's best games too this season, just from a catch and run standpoint. He had a nice sideline catch from McCarthy, and he had a really nice sideline catch from Brosmer on the 3rd and 17. That was a good ball too. I mean, it's windy. Everybody knows you're throwing. Everybody knows you're probably trying to get it to Jefferson. He kind of put it in the one place that Jefferson could get it, and Jefferson makes that play. I know Jefferson's numbers weren't off the charts, but I did feel like that was one of his best games this season. So you can tell nobody's quitting, and maybe that's to the detriment of their draft pick. That's what it is. They've won 3 in a row now. The culture still feels fine. It's just the quarterback talent is not fine.
No, it's not. And the receivers, I'm glad you mentioned Jefferson's game. It was a good bounce back game for him. I think he broke 2 different tackles on one of those long third down conversions that he had. But he dropped a pass. He still has one of the highest drop rates of his career. And I forgot, I'm remiss in not mentioning that Jordan Addison drops that touchdown from McCarthy early in the game. Addison's got a career worst 8 drops according to Pro Football Focus, and he had just 7 combined over his first 2 years. So for Addison, he has just had, independent of the quarterback struggles, Addison has had a particularly bad season for his standard. And so has Jefferson, but this was a game that they needed from him, and I think they set him up for success. And it's funny because he's not the kind of guy who's, he's not Deebo Samuel. He's not going to catch and run and break a bunch of tackles. And even Jamar Chase, who's very good at that. But Justin likes to flex and show off those opportunities when he can. And to his credit, he made some good plays on Sunday against the Giants.
They got the win largely because the defense has been so good, and Brian Flores against any young quarterback is a mismatch. They made Jackson Dart's day just miserable. He didn't even try a pass until the second quarter. He didn't complete a pass until he'd thrown an interception already. He finished with 33 yards passing. I think maybe 13 net yards passing. It was a dismal day for the offense. It was only close. The broadcast was right. They kept saying feels like the Vikings are up 2 or 3 scores, but then it was, tied in the fourth quarter until they got into field goal range. And then it was just it almost felt like it was over at that point because the Giants just couldn't move the ball. And it, by all intents and purposes, was. Why I think I know the answer to this, but like, why is Flores just so good and always has been so good against young quarterbacks in particular?
It's because of the pressure. And yeah, you know why? It's because of the pressure based system, because they're not as good as they are at disguising things on the back end, which they are. Durante Jones, their secondary coach, deserves a lot of credit for that. It's more of the Flores front seven kind of mystical shape shifting, who's coming, who's not, all that kind of stuff. And it really stresses protection plans. It stresses protection plans of veteran quarterbacks when Detroit is sitting there and you see Jared Goff moving Jahmyr Gibbs and trying, okay, you need to come over here because we think they're blitzing here. And oh, nope, Harrison's coming from the other way. Or Dak Prescott. It got by Dak too last week. Jackson Dart's got no shot. He's got no shot against that. Young quarterbacks have no shot at figuring this stuff out. And you can tell why our colleague Ben Gessling had mentioned recently about how I think a coach had told him that in Flores' defense, if you survive the first quarter, you can at least start to figure out the blitzes that they put in for that week, and you can kind of come up with counters and know what to expect a little bit. And so with the Giants, they didn't even try to, as you mentioned, throw in the first quarter. They're like, we're just going to run every down, see what you guys have in store for, first, second, third downs, and just keep running at it regardless. Dart didn't attempt to throw till his 17th play out there in the game. I think he had taken a sack by that point, so they at least had called a pass play. But Mike Kafka, the Giants interim coach, their interim staff just kind of said, we're going to play this as safe as humanly possible, hope that JJ McCarthy makes a bunch of mistakes. And they were almost right in terms of staying in that game. But that was one, and this was a game in the Giants and Vikings where neither of these coaching staffs had a ton of confidence in their quarterbacks, and it was painfully obvious. But it's because of the pressure, just confusion that they can force at the line of scrimmage. I think that's why the stat on the broadcast was like Flores is 11-1 now against rookie quarterbacks as a defensive play caller.
Oh, is it just getting harder across the board for young quarterbacks just because a lot of these defenses now are running similar disguises? I think Ben wrote about this maybe a week or two ago with like the pure progression system that they're asking McCarthy to play in and stuff like that. Like, is it just that much harder for a young quarterback now because defenses are so good at disguising things and it's hard to diagnose until you've had enough reps?
Yeah, and it's a world of difference compared to the three defenses we've just seen in the Giants, Cowboys, and Commanders as Vikings observers compared to what you're going to see. Well, Detroit's pretty bad too, but what you're going to see Green Bay in the finale, or what you've seen in the past, even with Chicago and Dennis Allen this season in 2 games. There are certain systems that really do take graduate levels. Oh, Seattle's the number one example, the best defense they've faced this year. There are graduate examples of like every cover 3 for Seattle is not going to look the same because they're going to be matching it to whatever route system they're facing. They're going to identify it. They're going to latch onto it, and it's going to look like man coverage, even though it's absolutely just man within zones like Mike Zimmer used to run for years in Minnesota. And so Zimmer was also pretty good with his veterans at disguising things. And Zimmer was kind of at the forefront, like Steve Spagnuolo and a lot of other great defensive coaches through the 10s, of developing those disguises and manipulating those coverages into their variations and their check-based systems, to where you've got veteran defenders out there like Flores says, I can have little mini play callers basically on the field. If I call a coverage, but Harrison Smith sees something, he can check it to something completely different on his half of the field or the entire back end and change it for me. So it's McCarthy, it's Dart. They're not just facing these great defensive play callers. They're facing the great defensive veteran minds who are also on the field being empowered to change things against them. These other defensive quarterbacks, as it were, on the field. So like that all develops into why coaches have asked quarterbacks in this pure progression system to say, you know what, forget this whole system of if it's cover 2, throw here. If it's cover 1, throw here. You're not going to be able to know what coverage it is. Just go to number 1. If he's not open, see who took him away, and go to number 2 and see if that guy's open. And you just kind of go through that whole process, and you better do it quickly. It can't be 1 to 2 to 3, because then boom, you're sacked, ball's out. It's got to be, you at least have to know what you're looking at. Knowing the coverage gives you those tips to get through it, all those different things. So yeah, defenses have gotten so much more complex, but there's also still quite the breadth of difference between like what the interim coach of the Giants is trying to do with his staff, which is just, you know what, drop into cover 4 and you're going to be dropping to the 20-yard line, do it every time, versus what Mike McDonald and the Seahawks are doing at just a completely different level.
But then again, you get a veteran like Matthew Stafford, and the Rams pile up 600 yards on Thursday Night Football against the Seahawks. So they are beatable if you know how to beat them. But there is a big difference between where Max Brosmer in his first start versus Matthew Stafford in his 150th start are in their careers.
I was going to say, man, that no-look touchdown Stafford threw to Puka where he's looking into the flat and then throws a slant without even looking, like, who can do that? Like, of course that's going to help put up 400 yards or whatever, but like there's 3 people on the planet who can probably make that throw.
And I still don't know how they lost that game, but that's a story for another time. And good stuff as always, Andrew. We'll do this again maybe in a couple of weeks, because obviously we got the Thursday night game, and that's a Christmas game, so we're not going to do that. But we'll get back to this soon, and happy holidays, and we'll talk to you later.
You too, Mike. Sounds good.